I got
Oh,
Weather
okay,
Canada.
because I think that's the one that I get, yeah, because it usually comes through the fire department when it's on their warning system. A motion to call public meeting to order. Okay, all in favor? Okay. All right. Motion to accept the agenda if there are no additions.
Well, we need to add.
Oh, we
let's
do,
add-
sorry. As amended, we have code of conduct, we have the 3 times tax rate, and we have a media, social media report. Okay, with those 3,
I can make that.
okay,
And did we want to move the 3x tax rate to be basically 3A, do it immediately?
yeah, it's still on the agenda though,
Okay.
so, yeah. Okay, so as amended, okay. All right, so we're going to move the 3 times tax rate policy that council had originally initiated for this year. We're going to move it up to item, I guess 4A will make it. And we will move that the town of Crossfield provide relief from the incremental tax associates with the town's 3 times tax policy for the 2020 fiscal year to those policies in compliance with the town's community standards bylaw for the town's non-residential. And so it will be postponed for 1 year. That is the motion. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried. All right. For confirmation of minutes, council minutes, we have June 16th meeting and June 22nd special meeting. Now, for the June 16th meeting, can I have a motion to accept those minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, and all in favor? Okay, for this special council meeting of June 22nd, I was approached by a member of the public as there was a discussion that took place during that meeting. Now, under the MGA, it indicates that meeting minutes are without note or comment. And the question was regarding the discussion in between the members of the public and myself and CAO Bosman regarding the verbal apology. It wasn't recorded minutes. And so the question was asked if that could be put into the minutes. Now, because that is comment, it doesn't become part of the minutes. CAO Bosman did post his apology on his Facebook page, and while I was asked to include it, and I don't have a problem including it, it is basically outside the policy or the standards or the regulations within the MGA. So does council want to include any comment in there about that, yes or no?
Sure. I mean, yeah, just a generic comment type thing, yeah.
Whatever. And what are we including? So I took no notes. I mean, it was just a contemporaneous discussion.
I guess the note would be just that that you committed to posting your apology
I
on your
can put
Facebook page.
on my personal Facebook page and put a note, hi, this is what went up on my Facebook page.
Perfect. Okay, and I think that meets with the criteria. So we'll make that amendment to the special meeting minutes of June 22nd. Okay, and all in favor of that? Okay, and those are both accepted then. Now, we are going to appoint a deputy mayor for a 1-year term. That would be Councillor Price.
Don't do it.
And you put your right hand on there. Okay, yep, okay, and you will read this.
I, Glenn Price, do swear as a councillor of the town of Crossfield that I shall perform the duties of the office of deputy mayor faithfully and intelligently, abide by statutes, bylaws, policies that govern the town, and promote openness, accountability, and responsibility leadership. Provide stewardship of the public assets through the development of evaluation of the town's policies and programs, and always consider the well-being and the interest of the community as a whole, leading the development of a safe, vibrant, and sustainable town.
So help you God.
So help me God, effective July 7th, 2020.
Perfect, okay, I'll get you to sign that. You will sign that, please. Okay, policy 2020-08, council use of municipal assets and services. That policy has gone back and forth a couple of times, and it basically outlines council's access to the town office and town staff, etc. Was there any final changes? If not, can I have a motion to accept policy 2020-08? Okay, all in favor? Okay, that is carried. There was a concern raised under actions and decisions, concerns raised with all for-profit businesses using town parks for classes. A resident raised a concern about for-profit businesses using the town parks at no charge. What is council's thought on this? Do we have any background information on that? Russ, sorry, Russ, you
Russ
I didn't
is
see you.
here. I'll let Russ and then I might add.
Sure.
So some of the fitness groups in town have been using the tennis court area to run their fitness programs because initially they weren't able to get into the community center, and with it opening soon, they potentially could be going back in. But I do know that a lot of people are still hesitant on attending these types of classes indoors. So they've been using that area. They are allowed to do these fitness courses or classes outdoors per Alberta Health guidance. One of the reasons they wanted to use the tennis court area was because it can control access. So it's just them in that area and not a whole bunch of people gathered. And a concern was brought to us as Mayor Tennant stated that these for-profit businesses are using our parks for free for their businesses. So, just looking for council's guidance on what we would like to do moving forward from this.
Just a philosophical outlook on this. We build facilities for our citizens to use them.
Mhm.
And if we had two private citizens go to the back of the tennis courts with tennis rackets and knock the ball back and forth, we'd say, great, somebody's using our tennis court. If 4 people showed up and they're starting to play basketball, we'd go, great, 4 people are using our basketball courts. These are citizens of Crossfield using a town facility. The fact that they're bringing in an additional person to guide their activities does not diminish the fact that citizens of Crossfield are using town of Crossfield facilities.
Mm-hmm.
If I went to the track and brought my personal trainer and ran laps and my personal trainer had a stopwatch and blah, 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 why would anybody have a problem? This is an organized activity that is actually increasing the utilization of our facilities. Isn't that what we're trying to do?
I think the challenge is that if they're using the tennis courts and somebody wants to come play tennis, who has kind of dibs on the space? Like,
And maybe we should have a sign-up sheet where they can
Yeah.
sign. If I wanted to sign up to play tennis from 2 to 3, that would be fine. We'd have a sign-up sheet. First come, first serve. I get it from 2 to 3, and the next people playing tennis get it from 3 to 4. Now, if people want to utilize it more intensively, but they do so in an organized way that doesn't crowd other people, it's not like they're there 24 hours a day. They're there they're about an hour a day.
Right.
Isn't 24 or 10 citizens using the facility better value to our citizens than 2 people playing tennis?
questions come at the end. Sorry.
Just a comment. May I jump in? Just as a public citizen. Treat the same as area. That's a public facility. You rent it. No different than it's a, like you were saying, absolutely. Use the facilities, but rent it.
Why do you don't rent it?
Okay,
That's what we're
sorry.
talking about. We're not going to bring in a small
Yeah.
rental fee.
If you don't mind, normally,
Absolutely.
yeah, we're just gonna.
I got one, but it's about being a business person. Okay, so we have 4, 5, or 7 people that can use a park, I don't care, but the problem is we have 1, 2, or 3 people that are meeting all the COVID rules at their homes and getting a business license. So is that what the complaint's about, that 4 people are paying to do the correct stuff at home, and the other ones just go work in the park.
I think
If
the,
everybody
And
could
if it's
share,
a business, they should get a business license.
but they got business license.
I think the complaint is
So if
that,
everybody uses it, they can all use it, business or not, right? So-
I think the complaint surrounds the fact that there's 1 or 2 groups that are using it now all the time, whereas when the community hall opens up, that's where we want them to go
Go
to.
back to, because
But
it's
if-
COVID right now. It's-
But if they are
there's like-
using the tennis courts all the time, then even if it was another group that wanted to use it, they basically got dibs on it because they're always there, whatever day, I don't know, high noon. And then it discourages other people from using it. Now, they could use the grass area of the park with no problems,
Yeah,
but
they
it's
do that,
using the
yeah.
tennis courts. And I'm 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I don't participate in either tennis or the fitness programs, but there is some discussion about them having basically access to top of the line area and nobody else having access to it. Am I correct in that?
So they were instructed that if somebody is using it or wanting to use it, they have to give preference to those people because that's what the town facility is used for. Something that I've thought about and would like to throw out there to you is that one of the things these groups need is access to power. Currently, they don't have that. The community center, I mean, it's got a parking lot in front that can be used. They're currently doing their activities on asphalt, so there's also a grass area behind that they can use. So we could suggest that they offer the programs there. If they're going to plug into the community center, we look at a modest charge. Maybe it's $5 a class or something to that effect to use our power for the classes. We can monitor it through our schedules. We can add to our current schedule for the community center. And it relieves that tension or stress or angst of having to use tennis court, basketball court area for something that's not originally intended.
When do you think our community will come open?
I'm aiming for next Monday. It's just a matter of getting all of our.
So this all goes away then? Everybody-
Well, it
Not
depends.
necessarily, because a lot of the participants are still not very comfortable going to the meetings and doing these classes. So they'd like to gradually build up to it over time by being able to offer online stuff, outdoor stuff, and then start moving into.
I know that in the evenings, and I don't know if it's a particular time of day that it's causing angst amongst the users, but in the evenings, there's a lot of young people using those hoops. And so, I mean, you know, for people getting out, getting exercise, you know, that kind of thing. I mean, it is a public space. Like, how many complaints have we really gotten? Like, are we listening to the noisy few or the silent majority, or do we have an idea of,
I've only heard from them as a few.
yeah. And a noisy few, I don't mean it as a negative, but you're trying to determine if we're creating a whole new policy for 1 or 2 people, or if there's a whole bunch of people now not using that area.
These were recorded activities as well.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And sorry, I don't want to be picky. The process for the meeting, really for the public comments are at the end. So if you don't mind, we're going to kind of hold you guys to that, okay?
So typical times for these classes are, there's some 6:30 in the morning, some 9:30, and then we're looking at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the evening. So, and then I guess there's a couple, 3 o'clock here and there, but, so my suggestion is more, maybe look at an alternate location such as the community hall. Like I say, it does provide an option of power if they're willing to pay for that.
Is there value in, you know, especially if the community hall is going to open possibly next week, is there a value to kind of monitoring how many people are using it and see how big of a problem we really have? Because to me, I can't imagine there's gonna be people shooting hoops at 6:30 in the morning. Having said that, I don't want to say, well, you know, that's too early for, so we don't worry about that group, because then everybody wants 6:30 in the morning, right? I mean, not everybody will, but, you know, then that would be, that time would be more appealing. If there's only one group doing it at 3:30 in the afternoon, and most kids or people are shooting hoops at 7:30 at night, then I don't know how big the conflict really is. And I think at the end of COVID, I think people will want to move back into the community hall.
This is a temporary thing.
So I think it's kind of a, you know, you hate to make all these policies and then it's just temporary and then it kind of all goes away, right? So,
But yeah, it's the only place to actually play basketball and stuff, so we don't want to take away something that we've already tried to offer by, you know, when the ground was redone with hoops and stuff. And there is other places in town where you can get pavement, like to do stuff on. So it's,
yeah. I wonder though, it might be worth reaching out to them for that other area, because then that would be just specific for that as opposed to a multi-use on the tennis
Give
court.
them the option, maybe.
Yeah.
Say, hey, would you guys like to do this outside, or?
Yeah, I think they would be willing to go that option simply because they can have access to it.
Yeah.
Right.
And if we charge them, obviously we can't give them the power for free because we're paying for it.
Right.
Um,
But they might like it better because there is power and where they are right now is
Yeah,
no power.
there's zero or whatever, yeah.
And the hoops at the schools are not the same as the hoops at the tennis court, so. So can you reach out to the groups and see if they'd be willing to do that in the interim?
Did we help that way, or?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so part of it was to look at that option, and the other was if council was looking to charge a fee for these.
Well, I think a nominal fee for the power would be in order, if they access it. If they continue as they have in Vanta Park without power, then I would just encourage them to use that, then there wouldn't be any issues that I can see. So I think rather than coming up with a policy or anything like that, like maybe just if you'd reach out to them, see if they'll work with that, and then I think that probably would resolve the issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, super, that sounds good. All right, item B, setting by-election dates. We need a motion to set nomination day for Tuesday, September the 8th, 10 to noon, and the by-election Monday, October the 19th, from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the town office. So do you want, Lindsay, do you want that as two motions, or do you want one motion for both? Okay, so somebody want to make that motion? Okay.
Yeah.
All in favor? Okay, and that is carried. All right. For the by-election, we need to appoint returning officer and substitute returning officer for the 2020 municipal by-election. And so motion to appoint Lindsay Nash as a returning officer and Merrill Jarvis as a substitute returning officer. Deputy Mayor Price, did you want to make that motion? Okay. All in favor? Okay, and that is carried. Once the by-election takes place, we will automatically have a organizational meeting, and so we will set the 2020 council organizational meeting and change. Oh, why does it say and change?
You can either change or cancel, because you can't, because legally you have to wait 4 days after the election to be able, till the results are official. So if you have a council meeting on the 20th, you either have to cancel or move it to the 27th. So
Okay.
it's up to council how you like to do that.
Okay, so do we want to move it to the 27th then? That probably sounds easiest, okay? So we'll set the 2020 council organizational meeting to October 27th council meeting date.
And the organizational meeting on 26th.
The organization meeting
First.
26th.
Oh, and the organizational meeting on 26th. Okay, yeah, I was thinking it was the same day. Okay. Motion that the 2020 council organizational meeting be held on Monday, October the 26th, and that the October 20th, 2020 regular council meeting be moved to Tuesday, October the 27th. Who wants to make that motion? Okay, all in favor? Okay. Change of signing authority. Does the ATV give us the documents, or do we need people to go in, or
We
just need the
We
motion?
just basically need a council motion that says, hi, these people are off.
Okay, so we need a motion to remove Elizabeth Graves and Bethany Gabriel from the signing authority for the town of Crossfield. Who wants to make that motion? Okay, all in favor? Okay. Canadian History, EHX, Town Sponsorship Podcast Episode. Who has information on that for us?
It's in your package. I believe.
Yeah, okay. Do you have anything to add to it, or? Okay, so just for the public's information, so I'll just read this out, it isn't that long. Person's name is Craig Baird. He runs a podcast. He runs the podcast Canadian History EHX. Podcast centers on all aspects of Canadian history, from stories of the regular settlers to the tales of important Canadians and momentous events. Podcast is currently one of the top history shows on Apple Podcasts and one of the top podcasts overall. Each day he averages between 1,500 and 2,000 downloads and push 50 to 80,000 downloads a month. Roughly 80% of the listeners come from Canada. He's starting a new series on podcasts that will center on the histories of small towns in the prairies, and towns in the prairies have amazing histories that go back a century or more in many cases. From the people who founded the community to the notable names and events in that community's history, there is a story to tell. He'd like to do these episodes about towns sponsored by the towns themselves. Each sponsored episode would focus on the community's history from its founding to today, as well as items about the interesting places to see and the things to do there today. Each episode would include the community's history, things to do in the area, interview with elected officials and notable citizens, places to stay, eat, etc. The charge for these sponsorship episodes is $250, and that's a one-time fee. The episode stays up forever on the podcast feed, so it can be discovered months and even years after it airs, helping more people find out about the community long after the podcast episode airs. The episode length, depending on content and interviews, would range between 15 minutes and 40 minutes. And with respect to his background, he's been doing the podcast since 2018, and prior to that spent over a decade working as a journalist in BC, Alberta, and Saskatchewan. He works from home with his podcast on an acreage outside Edmonton, and he also writes weekly and monthly local news columns for newspapers in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. And if anybody is, or if we're interested, he's available to talk over the phone, Zoom, or to discuss this further if there are any questions. And again, his name is Craig Baird. So for an investment of $250, what is council's wish? Sorry?
I don't have a copy of what you just read.
It's in here, oh, okay, it, I haven't printed the agenda here. I think we need to.
Yeah. Three episodes,
I don't even know what a podcast is, so.
It's like watching a little movie on your computer, and it talks about, you know,
It sounds really good, but I'd have to talk to the history guy, I'd have to down and see if it's worth it, but until after the meeting, I can talk to him and then discuss it.
Yeah, I'd like to go hit this guy's site and see.
Yeah, like you just check and see how motivated it is and talk
Well,
to
so then why don't we,
story and genius.
So then why
I'd have
don't,
to look into it.
I'll make a motion that we postpone this, and administration and anyone interested can get some more information. I think for $250, it sounds like a pretty good deal, but never having seen any of this work before, not sure how well it goes. So all in favor of tabling that, and that is carried. Okay. Ken, do you have this or no?
I think I do, but
Okay, if
I
not,
don't
no.
seem to have it
Okay.
with me today.
Okay. So one of the additions to the agenda is the next item, and it is code of conduct, and it is me making the motion. So, and motion reads as, whereas Crossfield Town Council by motions 043-2019 and 251-219 has previously considered a code of conduct concern, and whereas Councillor Helfrich has exercised his right to review by the Alberta Ombudsman of these actions. And whereas the Alberta Ombudsman, having made no comment on the factual findings of council, but having determined the actions of a previous member of this council to have represented a significant breach of administrative fairness, and having thus recommended reconsideration of this matter. And whereas the matter of Councillor Helfrich's participation in external committees and representations is to be reviewed in the October 2020 as part of the council annual organizational meeting, and whereas council wishes to save the legal staff and other costs associated with the reinvestigation of this matter, move that council take no further action at this time regarding the code of conduct matter related to motion 043-2019 and 251-2019, and that the town of Crossfield accept the policy and procedural recommendations of the Alberta Ombudsman related to the Councillor Code of Conduct bylaw, and that administration be directed to prepare for July 21st, 2020, appropriate changes to the town procedure and bylaws consistent with the Ombudsman recommendations. And that is my motion, and all in favor? Okay, and that is carried. Okay. The 3 times tax rate, we did that one. The media, social media committee report, and this will also be my motion. Under key findings, any potential follow-up with town employee is a private and confidential matter explicitly protected under the Personal Information Protection Act, which is referred to as PIPA. There should be no further public action on this matter as it relates to staff. On the substance of the Facebook post, council is free to take a position for, against, or neutral as a majority of council sees fit. As a broad general rule, town employees are free to participate in social media subject to the restrictions available to the public sector employees as per Supreme Court of Canada ruling Osborne versus Canada 2 SRC 69. A summary of these restrictions is that in areas where the town has specific written policy and the staff member in question has meaningful participation in the formation and or implementation of these policies, then the town may impose reasonable restrictions upon the employee's public comment for these specific areas of town policy. And key recommendations are that strong policies be put in place with appropriate safeguards to ensure all future public communication purporting to be on behalf of council has indeed legitimately been approved by council. Key recommendation 2, council has the ability to publicly engage on any issue of public concern it wishes to engage in. Should council wish to do so, it is recommended that written policy be established. Should such policy be in place, it would be subject to reasonable parameters, legally permissible to restrict the social media interactions of senior staff regarding these policy areas. While staff enjoy broad constitutional protection regarding their freedom of information, regarding their freedom of expression, the committee believes that it may be prudent to make mutually agreed amendments to the terms of employment for senior staff members with a policy formation and implementation role to avoid topics of particular sensitivity within the community. And I move that council receive and accept the draft report and recommendations of the social media committee, and that administration be directed to draft a policy consistent with recommendations 1 and 2 for final consideration by council, and that council initiate relevant discussions related to recommendation number 3, and that when the social media committee provides a final report to council, that it be made part of the minutes. And that is my motion. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, we are now at business arising from mayor and councilors' business and committee reports. I have the June 22nd special council minutes or special meeting in mind, and then I have an update also giving to administration from the Nose Creek Watershed Committee on where they currently are with their modeling report for reporting for town's participation in monitoring sites, and also as we were what's the term? We kind of applied for the grant.
Yeah, we
on
are
their
the
behalf.
sponsoring municipality on the
Sponsoring
Alberta
municipality.
Community Partnership Grant to fund the study.
Right, and so there'll be updates and recommendations coming from that. And then I had a request here as well from Kelly Carter. Now, let me just find that. It is a proclamation request, and it came to me and not to the town, so I will read it, and council can decide on the proclamation, and then I can forward it to administration. So it is a National Drowning Prevention Week proclamation request, and Canada faces a major problem and a preventable one. Over 400 people die every year from drowning. On behalf of the Life Saving Society, Alberta and Northwest Territories branch, I'm writing to ask that you proclaim July 19th to 25th, 2020 as National Drowning Prevention Week in the town of Crossfield. The Life Saving Society is a national charitable organization working to prevent drowning and reduce water-related injury through our training programs, Water Smart, public education, drowning research, and aquatic safety standards. The Life Saving Society certifies Canada's national lifeguards. National Drowning Prevention Week is one of the Society's leading public education initiatives, with events taking place across the country to focus media and community attention on the drowning problem and drowning prevention. During this week, the Society urges individuals to supervise children in and around water, refrain from behaviors that may result in intoxication while participating in aquatic activities, and wear a life jacket when boating. If every Canadian followed these steps, we would greatly reduce Canada's drowning rate. A proclamation from the town of Crossfield would give greater exposure to our life-saving efforts to residents of the town of Crossfield, and I hope that you will consider our request and then contact information if you have questions. What is council's wish on the proclamation?
I support it.
Yeah, I support it. Yeah,
Okay.
I drowned
Okay.
too, so.
So I will get that sent to you, and all in favor of declaring that proclamation. Okay, and that is carried. All right. That's my business, Councillor Milford.
We just had the special council meeting, and then last week I spoke with the bank regarding the funds from the previous youth group. I guess the town administration has been receiving or has access to bank statements on it. The money's currently in an account that has no fees. They were just sort of, I guess it's been a year since they've heard anything about it, and wanted to know what we were going to do. I know the previous councilors were working on stuff at one point, and we're actually, one of them was had signing approval as well. I removed that. It's just myself right now. However, to move the money away from the account, we would need a second signature from someone, from councilor, CAO. Yeah, I remember we had this conversation, and I thought we were going to see, like, we pulled the money away that they received from any boards, but I also remember, like, I don't think that amount of money that's in there was ever raised. Like, we never raised that much, over 2,000. I mean, I'd be surprised if they ever raised more than 1,000.
So you think that some of the money that's in there was from other funding?
Still, yeah. And I mean, if it's been, you know, a few years,
Right.
you know, that we've even, or since we even actually were active with it. So I don't know if we want to direct administration to see how we, proper way to move that money. Does that make sense?
What do you think about, I was kind of thinking about that with it being on the agenda. You know, the group that's doing that disc golf?
Yeah.
I think they've had to stop because of COVID, but were they not looking for some money to complete their project? Would that be a nice fit if we gave them the residual money from there?
I don't know, all of it, some.
I I don't remember how much we made a motion to give them money, but out of general revenue. But if that kind of covered what they were looking for, then they would need the money out of general revenue, and it would be, you know, something for
Yeah,
activity
podcast
booths,
or
you know,
something.
yeah, or something like that. I think that, you know, that would be like recreation for everybody to, I don't know, to be involved in and participate.
Do something with it, because we talked about this 2 years ago and a year ago.
I know.
It's still-
Well, I think the intent was to try and get a group going again. And I think that's why we didn't make the decision before, because that was kind of the focus was to, but I mean, we've tried it now for a couple of years, and I mean, even when you were on there, it was kind of limping along fast. And I mean, it's really hard to get kids that are old enough to do stuff, because then they're about grade 11 and 12, and then you've got them, you know, you do a fall thing, and then they're done in June. And so trying to get that turnover and get some consistency, I think, was part of the challenge as well. So, I mean,
Especially with COVID right now, like.
well, yeah, and I mean, if it doesn't look like it's going to come back, rather than have that money just sit there, I'd like it to go to something.
Good use.
Do we have any, is administration aware of any type of restrictions that would be on that money when we don't really know where it came from?
Yeah, kind of by definition, the fact that we don't know where it came from, it would probably be unrestricted. Off the top of my head, and I'd have to review the record, I'm going from memory here, so, but I believe that that group received some funding from the town in terms of, I believe it was FCSS.
Yeah, but I think that went back. I thought that went back to FCSN, because that amount we could track.
Because it was about $5,000.
That's right, and that we could track because of the application.
Right.
But if there's about $2,000 left,
Well,
like,
2,500, yeah.
I
okay,
mean, speaking generically
Yeah.
in terms of policy, if we can track where the money came from,
Right.
we would be legally restricted to use it for a purpose consistent with the original donation.
and I think the only way that we can do that is if we've got all the old records for the deposits. But for example, like when I got them to do yard work in my yard, I gave cash. So, and how much I gave them, I don't know, because I hired them a couple of
You
times.
gave it to me.
Yeah, exactly. So I can't even remember how much it was. It was substantial, but I would rather it went to something like this, whatever golf, than get the money back, because that was never my intent. So I mean, the only way you're going to be able to figure out a lot of it is if you go back through the deposit slips, and if it was an actual check, then you would know that. But I think a lot of people gave cash, and I think that's why it's kind of still sitting there.
Yeah, it's easy enough to get the electronic bank records pulled. And we'll see.
Well, I think we've got them all, because I think we already did that once.
Yeah.
And that's how we determined the amount that was FCSS.
Right.
So shall we then make a motion that we find out what we can actually do with it? Because now we're another 2 years out, and I mean, eventually there's probably statute as to how long you hold on to it before you can actually disperse it. And I mean,
suspect it would go into essentially a trust fund where we'd have to honor the original donation purposes.
for how long?
I know that in tax recovery, it's 15 years. I don't know what the rules are for miscellaneous donations. I'd have to look that up.
Okay. So do you want to make that motion then, that administration determine what can be
Yeah.
done with that? And especially if we can't determine where the money came from? And I would suspect, now, I mean, that's just, of course, my opinion, but for a lot of the people that donated the money, they have zero expectation of getting it back.
Yeah, it was sort of like a donation, yeah.
Okay, so is that your motion?
Yeah,
Okay, all in favor? Okay. We will do that, that's great. Okay, Councilor Price.
I just had our special council meeting and nothing we're reporting today.
Okay, administrative operations update.
Not a ton, Madam Mayor. 3 months ago when we did our post-COVID budget, we were all crying in our beer and thinking about jumping off a bridge. I wouldn't say it's hugely better, but most of the trends are going in the right direction. Utility consumption is approximately normal. It's a bit low, but it's not falling off the cliff. Citizens unable to pay their TIPS program, tax installment program, as well as utility payments have actually held up surprisingly well. We have a very, very large allotment in our budget for the capacity of businesses and individuals to not pay their taxes at the end of September. I'm hoping, and the anecdotal evidence suggests that may have been too pessimistic an assumption on our part. For the council meeting on the 21st of this month, we will have a full half-year budget update. We've basically got it done. We've got some reconciliations and a few bookkeeping things to do, but relative to a year ago, it's certainly bleak. Relative to where it was 3 months ago, it's actually surprisingly optimistic. So it's not good news, but the news is not as bad as it was. For what it's worth, our internal projections are showing us tracking about $180,000 better than our post-COVID budget. It's the middle of the year. That's not worth a lot. It's like, being up a field goal at halftime in the Super Bowl. It doesn't really predict a lot, but it's better than being behind. Some updates with regard to provincial actions. The Premier last week announced a $10 billion recovery program for the province. There's a few items that touch the town. We did have a grant pending within the Alberta Innovates program regarding a sewage treatment option for the town. We kind of let the grant go into dormancy because the fund ran out of money. The province has put $175 million into the fund, and so it's been refunded, so we're going to attempt to revitalize that grant application and see if we can access some funding. On the same project, we also have a grant pending before the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. We were in contact with the FCM people today, actually, last-minute exchanges of some minor information. We're anticipating a decision potentially in August on that. The doctor's office's council directed administration to engage with the pharmacy and the doctors at the clinic to see if we can keep them in town, and it's not 100% done. I know the pharmacy has announced that they're staying open, so they're obviously optimistic about it. We'll be having some final discussions with the principals over there in the next few days to hopefully conclude the final details. It's nice that we're keeping the pharmacy in town. That's obviously, or not the pharmacy, but the doctor's clinic in town. That's obviously a positive for our community. The province, again, as part of Premier Kenny's $10 billion announcement, they've announced a $500 million fund for municipal infrastructure. There's no specifics on the fund. They've just confirmed that there will be a fund. If this $500 million was distributed according to the MSI Municipal Sustainability Initiatives formula, the town would see about $500,000 out of the fund. If they use the gas tax rebate formula, we'd see about $375,000. They haven't announced which formula we're going to use, but they typically use one of those two formulas, so that's kind of the playing field. The province has also been sending a little bit mixed messages on this one. They are in discussions with the federal government where that $500 million would be matched by federal funds. The official letter from Minister Madhu said they are in discussions. The press release from the province said they anticipate the funding coming and that we are days away from it. So the $500 million to be spread among Alberta municipalities is in that gray area between discussion and anticipation. Hopefully that will be clarified in the next little while. Assuming the federal funds come through, the provincial or the town of Crossfield share would be, again, depending on which formula they use, somewhere between $750,000 and $1 million. Obviously, very, very good news. We can use the money, and I'd like to publicly thank Mustafa, our engineering staff, as well as Courtney, our FCSS grant writing person. We had 25 grants ready to submit, and when the minister announced the money, we hit the send button. So I don't know if we're the first ones in, but we were there within like a minute of announcing the fund. So we've got our grant applications in preemptively. We've hit the criteria very, very well. The province basically wanted shovel-ready projects that could start now. They wanted to make sure that there was a high labor intensity percentage of the grant to maximize the amount of money that went to hiring people. And their third criteria was that they wanted the supply chain for the progress or the projects to be Alberta-based to the highest maximum degree. We obviously picked our projects and we wrote our grants to maximize the fact that we hit all three of these criteria on every single one of our grants. We feel good about our grant applications. Of course, everybody else feels good about their grant applications, but in terms of being as ready as we could possibly be, like we hit the send button like literally within a minute of this program becoming official. So we've done what we can do, and let's hope we get a good outcome.
Okay, good. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, any questions? Can I have a motion to accept the administrative operations updates? Okay, all in favor? That's carried. Okay, we have nothing under closed session, correspondence binder, there's nothing there. We are now at gallery questions and answers, if we have them.
Good evening. Dan Willis here. Just want to give my notes here. So I have an update on it. So the last meeting, there was all the councillors were asked to prepare a statement. And one of the councillors, I believe, plagiarized somebody off the internet. Mr. Elfridge, I do believe, took Logan Paul's statement of white privilege and he edited it to suit him with removing everything that didn't appeal to him. He added his age to make it personal, and he didn't give credit where credit was due. He didn't say this was prepared by somebody else other than me. I want to know why you felt that was all right to do. And then secondly, we were talking about 314 Pier and future projects with the rodeo grounds. He made a comment about we're not going to make any decisions until the cookies are on the table. Can you give me some insight to what that comment was as well? Thank you.
Sure. So I guess as far as my statement I made, that was obviously based off of Mr. Paul's statement. It wasn't meant to say all the right things or anything like that. I just felt that it really stuck with my feelings and represented them. And that's why I adopted part of his statement. I'm happy, I wasn't trying to deceive anyone. I'm happy to own that the fact that most of it had been pre-written. You know, given the fact that he's a celebrity, I don't think it's too uncommon not to quote these people in our lives sometimes, but that's what it was. Regarding the rodeo grounds, basically meant, I mean, it's no secret that the infrastructure there is getting older, and we obviously need to make a decision at some point here, probably not this year, but in one of the coming years on what we're going to do with the rodeo grounds. Are we going to inject money into it and create new buildings, or are we going to move locations? So that would be your cookies.
Okay, so is it cookies for the town or cookies for the councillors?
Well, for the town, of course.
Okay.
No, we can't accept anything.
In the heyday of everything, when everybody was spending money, we were trying to get something, but that all vaporized, and now you see what the marijuana business is. So
Yeah.
there's going to be no movement on that for the near future.
The last thing I forgot to ask is the employment opportunity that was sold to us when the plant was here. I guess that's in the future years with more jobs coming.
You know that business better than we do. So when it gets busy, you'll know me first.
Yeah, there's been some, I have no idea where this information comes from, but there's certainly been some incorrect information regarding 314. 314, they bought some land from us. It was a generic standard land deal. They gave us money, we gave them land. That's it. There's nothing else there. In terms of them making promises, and I mean, developers can promise us anything they want. That's the standard developer game plan. A developer comes in, especially land developers, give us our development and you'll be the land of milk and honey. you know, my position on that has always been show me the money. I think if you look at the strength of the development agreements we've written, for example, the green developments, we got an awful lot out of that. That's a really sweet park in the middle of the subdivision. That's literally the first thing they built. They provided some substantial financial support to our library, some substantial financial support to our fire hall. I can't speak about development agreements that came into place before I got here, but I'm proud of the development agreements I've written while I've been here. Iron Landing, we renegotiated that deal and we got a $900,000 lift station that the town didn't have to build. We got a $200,000 road that the town didn't have to build. We did okay. The relationship between the town and developers is the developers are there to do the very, very best they can possibly do for their shareholders. And my job is to do the very, very best I can do for my ratepayers. And I try to do my job better than they do their job. And as we've had a private conversation, if you want to look at the development permits and you want to look at the approvals of 314, they're a public document. Show up at my office and I will give them to you. If you want them, if you show up with a flash drive and I give them to you as PDFs, they're free. If you want me to print them off, I'll charge you 2 cents a page because that's what my photocopier guy charges me. But if you want, it's all public information. And if you want public information, show up in my office and I will give it to you.
I just remember when they were making the presentations, they had all these computer-generated photos and futuristic looks.
And I will share with you in this, because again, this is completely public information.
They were looking for boats, so we believed what they were telling us to be true, and we were in support of this. Now we want to know where the promises are. That's all.
And I'm about to get to that, you know. They do have development permits approved by the town of Crossfield for an expansion, and I may have the numbers slightly wrong. I believe it's about 280,000 square feet of development. That it's between 250 and 300,000. I forget the exact number. If you come look at the development permits, I'll get you the exact number. If that were to all take place, it would be several hundred jobs here in Crossfield. As you know, the cannabis industry has collapsed. Many big multi-billion-dollar players are in extremely difficult situations right now. The whole industry is in turmoil. Obviously, without sharing the specific details of it, 314 going forward from a financial solidity, financial solidness point of view, and in terms of their engagement with the European market and other potential markets, they're in extremely good shape. I am fully confident that time will show that this was an excellent choice by the council of the day to bring this group in, both in terms of tax revenue and employment within our town. COVID has kicked a lot of things to the curb. The collapse of the cannabis industry has changed the world. Any development is speculative. When Dream Development came in, we thought they were going to build this many houses. The economy collapsed and they built fewer houses than we expected. Our role is not to be prophets of the future. My name is Ken, it's not Nostradamus. They came in, they bought land, they built a building. They followed all the rules to build that building. We hope they're successful. We hope every business in town is successful. I can't predict the future in my crystal. I have the $1.99 Walmart crystal ball. It works for about 2 months. I can't afford the $500 Perks crystal ball as we see 10 years into the future. But in terms of some shady backroom deal or something bizarre going on, or I think Devin's phrase of cookies was perhaps an unusual phraseology. There ain't nothing there, and if you want to come look at the development permits and the whole shtick, come to my office. It's free on a flash drive. It's 2 cents a page if you want to photocopy.
I just want to
And I can't make it any clearer than that.
I just want to follow up a little bit on that, and that's a position of council. So see, the economy didn't turn the way it did, and 314 was as successful right from the get-go as they anticipated. So the town owns the rodeo grounds. At one time, the rodeo grounds is where the arena was. Now, that's long before anybody here was pretty much even born, but I remember it being there. When the arena was built, then we put it out there. And realistically, it was out there because there was nothing out there. We wanted to promote it, we wanted to keep it. We'll just put it out there. For council to take a look at the size of that lot and of that piece of property, and the fact that realistically it's used 2 weekends a year. Usually graduation is out there and the rodeo is out there. If 314 was able to pull through, the economy did what it did, I'd be hard pressed to face the ratepayers and say we would not consider selling the rodeo ground and moving it. It was never our intent that it would just be sold, that was the end of the story. But if we could sell it and make the taxes on it that we could potentially get, I think we owe that to our ratepayers to take a look at that automatically being up for sale for the right price, which would then give us money to then move it, to make a better location, because when we moved it out there, it was not what it is today. And so then we'd be able to perhaps make it multi-purpose so that you could have motocross out there, you could have the rodeo out there, the grad out there, you could have the smash up derby out there.
Model airplanes.
You could have it be, you could have the Ag Society be out there. You could have something there,
Community thing.
you know, where it would be.
100 days a year. Sort of.
Exactly. And so it is automatically up for sale when the town owns it for the right thing, for the right purpose, with the intent of the benefit of the town.
And we got to get market value for everything.
That's the answer to
Market value.
Yeah, and market value is law. So we can't say if it's worth $100,000, we can't sell it for 50. Like, by law, it has to be market value.
Just to amplify that, the process there's lots of rumors, especially in rural Alberta, and I've worked in some really rural Alberta places, and some of those councils, you know, but let's not comment on some other councils. There are substantial legal restrictions on what we have to do before we can sell land. The biggest and most important one of those is we have to sell it for fair market value. And there's a couple of ways we can determine fair market value. One is we put it on the market and market it for however long we market it to the real estate agent or whoever that market establishes it. Or if we want to do a quick sale, we need to have an independent, accredited appraiser in a third-party way establish fair market value using outside objective criteria. The way the Municipal Government Act is, if I get an offer on land, I am legally required to bring it to council. If you say, Ken, I'll give you $3 for the rodeo grounds, I am legally obligated to go to council and say, Dano offers $3 for the rodeo grounds. Chances of being accepted not particularly good, but I'm required by law to bring it to council. We get 6 offers a year from whoever on town land, and most of them are crazy. And I'll bring it to council and say somebody wants to pay 80 cents on the dollar for a piece of land, I recommend you take the offer. Occasionally an offer gets to the point where it's credible and the person potentially has the capacity to complete the sale and engage on terms that would be legally permissible and in the wisdom of council better for our municipality. The cannabis guys, they like to have plans in the future because that's a portion of what they do in terms of raising funds on the capital market. Look at all these wonderful things that could happen. You should buy our stocks so that we have money. Every cannabis company that I'm aware of does that. 314 has made some preliminary inquiries about buying the rodeo grounds, and that's not a secret. There's nothing hard, there's no deal, there's no backdoor, behind the scenes, cloak and dagger, anything. If they come up with enough money and council feels it's in the best interest of the community, council will look at it. But there ain't nothing there.
The other thing to know too, that is in the rodeo agreement that we have with them, there's a clause that if it is up for sale, if it is sold, that there is a period of time where the town's commitment is relocation. And you know, like if it was, for example, if they came and bought it in May and the rodeo is normally in June, that the rodeo will still take place. We have a period of time where we commit to helping them move it. They'll find a location. That's with both the seller and the rodeo, because
we're
that is
obligated
in
to
the
give the
agreement.
rodeo guys a year.
So it's very clear. It's not a sold, you know, out the back door and it sucks to be the rodeo, so.
Is that the same with the golf course as well?
That would be the same with golf course.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lease with the golf course, and it's a binding lease. I believe there's 4 years, 3.5, 4 years left on the golf course's lease. If somebody, I mean, if Bill Gates comes in and says, I'll give you $1 billion for the golf course, I recommend you take it. But Bill would be running the golf course for 4 years.
Because the golf course lease is in
Because
place.
the lease supersedes the transaction. It's part of the transaction. So, yeah.
The lease was left?
Sorry?
3.5?
I think 3.5. I'd have to look at it for sure, but yeah, about that, yeah.
We just renewed it, and I think we renewed it in the spring for 4 years. So I think there's like 3 years and 9 months left. I mean, I could be in a month or 2 months.
Would you be able to comment on why it was renewed?
Because their old lease expired.
Okay.
And it had actually expired for a while, which, you know, I mean, if you're thinking back to some of the comments back and forth gained on social media, it had been expired for a while, and we were trying to get a conversation started, and it took a lot longer than originally anticipated, so, yeah. So that was, and a bit of that back history, of course, is not available for public, but, yeah, so, okay. Any other questions?
Can we to present my letter to the town?
Council did something different. They've rolled back the 3X for 1 year. So this year, nobody's getting charged, including you. And we're going to look at the policy, and we're going to recraft it. So for this year, everybody's good, and we're going to rework it and figure out what we're going to do next year. But for 2020, you're golden.
Okay. I would like that letter forwarded to the town council, because that particular lot, that business can't operate without it.
Yes.
And that business creates a lot of employment within town.
Yeah, no, it was actually on my list, and I don't, this is a confidential matter, so I'll be careful how I say it in public. But the specifics of your place clearly met the criteria of the exemption policy. So you were automatic, and you know, we've kicked it down the can for a year. We're gonna, yourself and a couple other people were in approximately the same situation. We're gonna make sure our paperwork is nice and neat and clean and tidy, and you know, the correct interpretation of the policy will endure, I guess is the way I'll phrase it to you.
I got a few comments and questions. Going back to my first, you know, when we first started the discussion about the groups using tennis courts, you know, I guess they're using those facilities for not what they were intended for.
True, and for profit, yeah.
Not really caring for it.
Oh, okay.
That's not where I'm going.
Oh, okay.
If they're intending to use them for whatever if they're going to run a fitness class, fantastic. I think it's great as well. And but it does have to be scheduled. No different than the community hall, the rink, the ball diamonds, you know, parks, whatever. It's a town facility that all of us residents, our tax dollars go towards building, maintaining all of that. So it needs to be scheduled. That's all. And you just post that, hey, this stuff needs to be scheduled, and people will abide by that. That's all. That would be my recommendation.
And you know what, if it continues past, and I guess we'd have to come up with a period of time. You know, if they keep doing it outside and won't go into the community hall, I certainly agree with you. I just sometimes struggle on creating policy if it's short term, and then you have to enforce the policy, and then it's, you know, the follow up and everything. I get that.
Yeah.
You know, certainly if it continues, 100%. I
Yeah, I
agree
was
with
just schedule, like, just make another schedule, just like.
Sure.
everybody's doing.
Yeah.
And hey, it's test course.
Sure.
Maybe somebody wants to run a tennis class there.
you. Yeah,
You know, no different than minor hockey wanting to run their minor hockey in the rink.
Yeah.
It's no different. So
Yeah.
have schedules for each facility that the town has. I'm not sure if that helps. When you said about the by-election, you had a September date in there. What was that in regards to?
nomination date. So when you
Nomination.
turn your papers in, will be September the 8th.
It would be September the 8th.
September 8th,
Yeah.
what, noon or something like that?
So you'll be able to pick up your nomination papers before then.
Prior to.
Yeah,
Yes.
and they'll be turned in,
Tomorrow, yeah.
they'll be turned in between 10 a.m. and noon on September the 8th.
And the election will be held on the 19th.
Of October.
Yeah.
What else do they have? Ken, you were speaking about the doctor at Crossfield and the town making arrangements to make sure that he kind of sticks around.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's a monetary thing and not just bribing them with donuts.
To be honest with you, we're still discussing it.
That's it.
We've played a catalytic role. You know, Ramon asked me to make some phone calls and see what I could do to try to help some people out. If there is a financial contribution, and that's not a guarantee, obviously that will be disclosed.
Okay.
The clinic is optimistic we can sort this out, but it's not completely sorted out yet. So I'm not going to comment on something that isn't done yet. But obviously, if it gets done, when it gets done, I hope, obviously that would be public.
Is that on behalf of the clinic or the doctor itself?
Repeat, I'm sorry, I haven't.
Is that directed towards the clinic or the doctor himself?
Our current thinking is that it would be with the doctor, but again, that is, you know, when we have a final deal, we will disclose what it is. But we don't have a final package yet.
And that will go through council.
That would have to go through council, obviously, yes.
Okay. Next one as well, the grant applications. Are the public able to see all of those grant applications that you have put in?
The ones for the province, I don't see why not.
Okay. I just want to, because you asked for the grant because you want to build something or improve something, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah, I mean, it's really boring stuff. There's like sidewalks and paving and an outdoor rink and.
I like that.
I think there's some drainage projects in there. I think there's a new sewer line in there.
But he can contact you directly for the
It's pretty,
list.
yeah. I think I got them in I think I sent them all in one big PDF. I'm happy to give you the PDF.
I had one last comment for council here, just because of the draft minutes. And I know that you guys had approved the minutes on the 16th. Is that correct?
The one meeting.
regular ones you
Yeah.
approved?
Yeah.
Did you approve the special council meeting?
Yes, because we did that one amendment to it.
And what was the amendment to?
Just that we put in the one line about Ken's comments going on his personal Facebook page.
That was the June 22nd special
Yeah.
council meeting.
And the amendment was, sorry?
And the amendment was a line in there that Ken had posted his comments on his personal Facebook.
Personal, okay, fair enough.
And if those are the draft minutes that are on the website, the changes of those drafts haven't been posted on the website yet. So the motion that they just made to approve it, but the amendment is not.
Yeah, thanks. I guess my comment was that, looking at the two councilors that just got down in there and their statements, I would, I don't know if how many big motions or decisions that between now and October 19th that the council has to make. I know that you guys are shutting down for summer. When is your?
We have one more council meeting in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks, and then you shut down until.
That was already
Until September.
Until September.
So there's like 4 meetings until the election, I believe.
Yeah, I would just.
Can I answer that before you can ask it? We will be doing very few motions. As
You knew
few,
what I was going to
yeah,
say.
as few as possible because I think that's the best for us and best for administration and best for the citizens.
Optics would.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Does that answer your question before you?
You know what I'm saying?
And
Did you
have,
have tonight's lottery numbers?
oh, no, I wish I did, but, okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Going once, going twice?
I got one more about the basketball courts and the tennis courts. So let's just say tennis guy brings in me and my son for tennis instructions. I'm paying him to be there. How long am I allowed to be there before the next guy steps up? Is that wait line take a turn kind of deal, right, in public places? So if you and me were playing tennis today, Shorty, and you and him were there waiting in line, how long would we have till the next guy's what, half hour, 45 minutes?
And you know what, we don't have it scheduled to that degree. I guess if we need it scheduled,
No
Yeah.
place has ever scheduled.
It's like playing a game of pool. When
Yeah.
you're done doing your tennis lesson, then the guy gets on, then you got the court.
I mean, if we need to, then, I'd love it if there was a line out there.
Places though, we
Yeah.
have people exchanging services in
Oh, I know.
public, we have managers, we have photographers, we have sports instructors. So I don't think I think it's just a matter of taking a turn, not
Yeah.
making a profit.
Right,
I
Yeah.
like it when people come to town. I
And-
like it when I
and-
see everybody.
They're getting used.
I know,
People in there, I can see Taekwondo,
That was totally cool.
I know.
And there's no one lining up to get in there.
And I was disappointed to hear that somebody thought it was an issue, but when people start raising it as an issue, then it's at least worth a
You have to
discussion,
look at it.
right? Yeah.
We should
Yes.
make everybody happy, even if it's only one person.
I just wanted to put my 2 cents in there.
Sure,
There's a lot of activity out there. It's
Don't
good.
stop,
Sure.
keep doing it.
And
If you're paying for them,
Yeah.
I'm happy we're using them.
And I like seeing it being used for, whether it's basketball or, whatever, tennis or whatever, right? So as long as it's being used. Okay, that's it. There's nothing more than we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.